Someone just tried to ring me. That threw me off. Oh, Mood Pointer! Hey! That's a name I recognize. How are you, mate? It's nice with the time difference now. I can get the Aussies on here. Oh, Rod's talking to his mom. I'm just gonna shut the door. One sec. You came to heckle? Why would you heckle me? Ha. How are things? How's everything going back in Sydney? Hope you're well. Usually I end up with a small group on here, not many. Sometimes I get raided and I get a bigger group, but it usually just ends up being a small group of a few regulars. There's surprisingly not a huge audience for knitting on Twitch, but there is one. There is some. All right, what am I doing? One purl, knit, purl, 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 and then I've got to do the cable. Right. Oh no, you got a cold. That sucks. Well, I took public transport yesterday for the first time in probably, I don't know, 5 months. Like, we've been avoiding it, but decided to risk it yesterday and masked up and tried to distance. And I mean, it was a Saturday in Munich, so not. It was. I mean, it wasn't like cheek by jowl, but it was pretty full. We went to East Sydney to a park. Could have ridden my bike. It was like a 40-minute ride. I was up for it, but Rod's not as confident riding the bike. It's more satisfying watching someone else knit. Oh well, you didn't see last stream. Last stream, I had all the my cables here. I got screwed up on which row I was on, and I had to actually then like spend a few hours afterwards going back and fixing it because I'd missed some cable crosses, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. This pattern I'm knitting is called Dr. G's Memory Vest, and I'll show you what it looks like. Actually, this is the Ravelry. Oh, I lost the Ravelry screenshot. You won't get to see what it looks like. I'll spread it out and show you what it looks like. I cleaned up my desktop and obviously deleted my image, but it's called Dr. G's Memory Vest. It's on Ravelry. It's it's unisex really. But the idea is it was designed for someone who had Alzheimer's. And so that's why it's called the Memory Vest. And so you can actually get the pattern by donating to Alzheimer's research. And I had this lovely wool, which, let me grab some. Some lovely good Aussie stuff. This is Joe Sharp Silk Road DK tweed I brought with me from the stash back in Australia. It's 85% wool, 10% silk, 5% cashmere. It's so soft. It's very squishy and soft and lovely and thick. And so I'm doing a vest for Rod out of it. But yeah, if you Google Dr. G's Memory Vest, you'll find it, or look it up on Ravelry. It's a lovely little pattern and a nice cause to support. So yeah, it's a lovely little thing, and the pattern designer's really cool for doing that. And it knits up, it's only got 3 charts, so it's got that sort of central tree motif, which is like a 10-stitch repeat, a 10-row repeat, and then it's got cables and ladders, which are an 8-stitch repeat, which is where I keep getting confused because it's multiples of 8s and multiples of 10s happening at the same time, and sometimes I forget to tick off correctly which row I'm on. But I know right now I'm on row 39. Which means I'm nearly at the end of one of the repeats of the trees. And I'll be coming up on a cable cross row, proper cable cross row soon. So one of the things I've been doing, I've been using this vest to illustrate for people, is cabling without a cable needle, because cable needles are a pain in the bum. And I don't know why. For some perverse reason, I'm using my Denise interchangeables to knit it. Hi, Margaret. How are you? Good to see you. So the Denise interchangeables are they're old school interchangeables. So they've got this sort of thick cable, and they click together. It's the first interchangeable set I bought probably like 15 years ago. And they're decent enough, but nothing compared to like the modern ones that screw on and have like the thin, nylon cables, stuff like that. I actually had to sticky tape this one together because it kept popping off. But I didn't have the exact size I needed, I think, in any other that I could conveniently access. What are you tired from? Oh, you woke up early, Margaret. Good grief. What's waking you up, Margaret? Just your brain? We get a lot of light coming in here. And we have shutters, but we don't shut the shutters. But our bedroom windows, the curtains let in quite a lot of light. So I'm thinking, especially as we get more into summer, Brad has a sleep mask, and I have sleep phones because I play white noise in them that I kind of pull down over my eyes. But I need to sort of get the sewing machine out and do some adjustments on the sleep phone headband because it's stretched out a little bit. I think I can make it fit better and block out a little bit more of the light. Maybe I could even line it with something else to block out more light. What's Rod saying to me? Oh, they just wanted to say hi. Oh, my in-laws called. You've always been someone who wakes up early? I'm always someone who stays up too late. I hate going to bed, but I also hate getting up. What are you knitting at the moment, Andrew? Anything in particular? Yeah, I imagine sleep, knitting time, personal hygiene, you know. Okay. The tree motif, so I need to do a knit to start the next round of tree branches, then 3 purls. Now I need to do just a little cable cross here. So what I'm doing is, as you can see, these branches, they converge into the central point. So this next knit stitch and the purl next to it need to swap positions. So rather than get out a stupid cable needle for that, I'm going to hook the purl stitch from behind and then use my thumb to slide both stitches off the needle and then rearrange them. So I've just done the cable cross without needing a cable needle. Now I can purl the purl and then I knit the knit. And I've successfully moved that stitch over. The central stitch, the tree branch, is actually a slipped stitch. That's sort of, you can tell it kind of stands out a bit more. So I'm just going to slip it as if to purl. And now I need to swap these two, this knit and this purl. This time I'm going to get the knit from the front, slide them off, rearrange, because I needed the knit stitch to cross over the purl. And then I can knit, purl. Start the next tree branch, purl. I'll show you what that looked like. There you go. So our tree branches have converged into the center. And yeah, that center column, the tree trunk, if you will, every other row, you just slip it. So it ends up with half as many stitches, and it kind of makes it, you can tell, it kind of sits up a little bit more. It's a little bit more visually distinctive through the slipped stitch. And then each of the stitch markers is marking the different motifs, obviously. And between each set of motifs, you see here these single columns of stitches. These are twisted knit stitches, so they're always knitted through the back loop. And again, that makes them sort of, you can tell the quality of them. They really kind of stand up against the purl background. The ribbing at the bottom is also done with twisted ribs, so all the knit stitches are twisted, which is why they sort of really don't recede into the purls. They really kind of stand up against it. And so every time I come to a stitch marker, so there's a purl, come to the stitch marker so I know that the next stitch is the twisted one. So I slip the marker, and then there's that column of twisted stitches. So instead of knitting into the front of the stitch, I'm going to knit into the back of the stitch. Sometimes I explain things, Andrew. Sometimes I just knit. Depends if anyone on is asking me questions. And then at the sides, it's just a panel of straight stocking stitch. So the blue is the start of the round. Okay, that is the end of the round. That is row 39. And I'll move my little stitch marker on my pattern. Okay, row 40. And that means that's a multiple of 8 and 10. Woo, exciting. Nothing interesting happens on this round. Getting my wool's getting tangled up because the tail, I'm knitting with the center, aren't I? I think, yes, or no, I'm knitting with the outside. See, this is why I should have done a center pull ball. And so it's getting tangled up a little bit. So I'm gonna sort of weave up the central bit and kind of try and tuck it down in there. It's just, it keeps coming loose. All right, starting round 40. This is a plain, still on a plain row, right? Yeah, plain row. But the next round, 41, will be exciting. That'll be cable crossing, so give me 15, 20 minutes to get to that, and then you'll get to see some more cabling happening. That should be a pearl. Yeah, the problem with these needles is the stitches don't really sort of want to slide around. I really got to kind of pull them and tug them around that chunky cable. But I do like the tips of the Denise. Like they're plastics, you know, they have a little give maybe, and they're pointy, nicely pointy. I feel like on a metal needle, this wool would just slide way too easily. Okay, I'm at the central tree motif. And on the even number rows, and so this is, The room is follower only. Is that intentional? Yes, it is, Margaret. You must have not been here the day I had some trolls. I had a few trolls, or one troll in particular, who made, you know, several different accounts just so that they could tell me, you know, it was not nice. I banned them. And so I was experimenting with the different moderate. You know, it's funny, the kind of person who will spend time just harassing someone who's knitting, of all things. But, yeah, I changed some settings, so. Hey, Elizara, how are you? And, you know, I don't have a separate moderator, so I figure I'll just make it followers only. It's not like that's a huge necessary hurdle, but yeah. Yeah, you were there that day? Yeah, that guy was a pain. Yeah, I reported multiple times too. What was I saying? The Denise needles. Yeah, I like them. I feel like metal needles would be too slippery with this wool. So it's a trade-off with the Denise. I did sort out my mistake the other day. Alizara, yeah, I had missed a cable cross. I'd done it one row too late, so I had to like drop some of the cables down 2 rows and fix up the errors. I was in the right row. I just hadn't done the cable cross in the right row. I was supposed to do it on the even row, and I did it on the odd row, and I did it on the even row, something like that. But I eventually sorted it out. So, back on track. Okay, halfway around the round. Right slipped cross and left slipped cross. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Like I don't know the proper names for things. Normally I knit from charts, and yeah, so I don't know what they're called. Margaret, is memory vest a meaningful term? No, it is. It's the name of the pattern. And it was designed by Kirsten Kapoor. And it was designed for someone named Dr. G, who was suffering from Alzheimer's. So to get the pattern on Ravelry, you have to make a donation to Alzheimer's research. And then you send the receipt to Kirsten, and she will send you the PDF of the pattern, which I thought was very lovely. And if you look on the Ravelry page, which I used to have a screenshot of, but appear to have, let me just grab one. I'll get one because I thought I had one. Just look up Ravelry, there it is. It's right there. And I'll drop that because I did have it on this screen. So let me just quickly, and that's way too big. There you go. You can see what it looks like. So yeah, it says, designed in honor of my father, Dr. G, who suffered from vascular dementia. So I just really liked that. I thought it was a very sweet thing. It's for a worsted 10 ply, which is a nice thick yarn, which is what I've got. So it knits up really quickly. And yeah, I thought that was a lovely combination of a nice thing to make and contributing some good to the world. Right slipped across, you slip one stitch to a cable needle, slip the next stitch, and then knit. Oh, okay, so it's just what I'm doing, but with a slip instead of a knit. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that there are standard names for all of these things. I think it depends pretty much on because there's no international standard really for stitches, for patterns, for symbols, for what they're called. So different people will call the same thing different things. But what is this pattern calls? So the little cables that I do on the tree branches, it calls left twist purl background. And then on the chart, the bigger cables here, it calls those cable 2 over 2 right, cable 2 over 2 left. So it depends on the pattern designer, really. It's a purl. It's a knit. It's a purl. It's not, cables, Margaret's saying it looks like it's a lot of switching gear for the cables. And kind of ties into what we're saying, Alizara, like cables seem complicated. And yes, you could use a lot of fancy terminology and they look like there's a lot going on. The reality is this pattern is fairly simple. As I said, on the tree pattern, when you look at it, yes, you could learn the names for the things, but if you look at it in terms of what's happening, you got a central column, which is slipped every other row. And then these branches on the odd rows, you just bring them in one stitch each way. That's really all there is to it. On these cables, the 4 cable 2 over 2, whatever you want to call it, that happens every 4 rows. So we'll be doing that on the next row. So you're actually you're not doing stuff with cables every row. Usually cables will only happen periodically. It's extremely rare you get a pattern where you're cabling on every row. At most, it's every other row, and oftentimes it's less frequently than that. It's on the app Neutrino I'm using to read charts. Oh, okay. Look, you can read charts without knowing what the hell things are called, really. I like using the symbols. You start with a pattern, you figure out what each symbol means, and then you're like, oh, I get it. But don't get attached to the idea that the symbols on one pattern will be used on the next, because every designer, other than, the sort of blank for knits and dots for purls are pretty standard. But like this one uses, like that central slip stitch uses a V, which is not a symbol I had seen before. The cable crosses with the diagonal lines. The good part is it kind of looks like what the cable ends up looking like. So you can kind of just tell from the picture. Usually get circles for yarn overs. There's sort of an unofficial standard that a lot of people use, but yeah, it varies. There's Japanese. The Japanese symbols are entirely different. Yeah. I'm sure it depends on which software they're using to lay out their charts too. I imagine a lot of people just use Excel. I mean, this pattern also uses a capital B for knitting through the back loop, which I hadn't seen before. All right, that is row 40 done. We are back to the beginning, which means this is a lot of cabling row. Yes, there have been attempts to make a sort of more standardized language, but, you know, let's say even if we all agreed, cool, these are the symbols. It's not like we're going to go back and rewrite every knitting pattern that's ever been done. Designers aren't going to do that, so it's never going to be a solved problem. You know, I went back and found some old patterns, like some of the first published knitting patterns or patterns from the Victorian age when there were, you know, publishing of patterns really sort of took off. And there was it was a sort of pattern for like a little purse or something. And what threw me off is all of the P's were actually the knit stitches. And it had a name, I can't, but it was like exactly reversed than what you would expect. Yeah, so the older you go, the sort of less standard it gets too. All right, here we go. The first of many, 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 many cables. So twisted stitch boundary, then a purl. All right, so now I'm gonna have to do the first group of 4 stitches. So looking at it, the left 2 stitches are gonna cross, so we're twisting, you can tell the rope. The left 2 stitches are crossing over the top, right? You wanna make sure you're twisting the right direction. So that means these 2 stitches are gonna come forward over these 2. That means I'm gonna grab them from the front. So I'm grabbing them from the front. So that's why I need the pointy needle to kind of get in there. And then I'm gonna slide all 4 stitches off and rearrange them. So you can see the twist. So I've just done the twist and now I can knit all 4 stitches. I literally, Margaret, used that XKCD exact panel in the talk that I gave where I talk about this. I literally switched to that comic. That's the problem with the app. They have like 10 patterns. I like the idea of, yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of people trying to do apps now that, or a system. I remember like Knit Companion is one that got popular because it sort of helps you with PDF patterns, have multiple counters and charts going on. And it can, but I believe to get the full like benefits of using it on a pattern, the pattern has to be reformatted in some way. And as you can imagine, not a lot of patterns are. All right, so this one twists the opposite direction. So that means the first 2 stitches need to cross to the front. So I'm gonna grab the stitches 3 and 4 from the back, slide them off, and see, I'm using my thumb, so they're not going anywhere. And then I'm gonna pick those 2 up, and then those 2. And again, I've done the cross, and now I just need to knit them. That's all cabling is. It's just reordering the stitches before you knit them. Nothing trickier than that. Okay, I'm at the ladder now, and so for the ladder, I just purl across to make the row of bumps. Next rung on the ladder. Okay. All right, we're at cables again. I have to cable like 12 times across this row. All right, so again. Just rearranging the stitches before I knit them. And you know, you are kind of stretching them, like. And notice when I do that purl in the middle, I then give it an extra tug. Just because I don't want that purl stitch in the middle to be too loose. Okay, now I'll rearrange these 4. And so that's why, you know, the fact that this is a left cable 2/2 cross, slip cable needle 2 front, hold, like it doesn't matter. I know what I'm meant to achieve, and then what you have to do to achieve that becomes obvious, and it doesn't matter what it's called. So there you go. We got our 2 cable twists. Yeah, apps and stuff like this PDF I'm using for Dr. G's. I've got it open in preview on the Mac, and I've drawn a line, like a rectangle across on the chart to mark which row I'm on. And after every row, I just drag it to where I need it to be. The other patterns I did earlier in the year, I use an app called a Notability on my iPad, but it's like Evernote or one of those, you know, that you can sort of drag in PDFs and draw on. And yeah, I just draw on them. You don't necessarily need anything fancier. I mean, I'm not doing like Shetland lace shawls and stuff like that where you've got 20 charts going on at the same time, all with different counters. Sure, I believe in that case you might need a specific app. You might want to break the pattern down because that is just, ugh. But yeah, this 3 charts is fine. All right, so I need to do move the tree branches. So yeah, on a Mac. So I'm just using preview on a Mac for this PDF. I've just got the PDF open on my desktop in preview. As I said, I've got a box on top of it that I drag and I've saved, so it keeps the box on top. All right, the center stitch, remember. So I put wool to the back, slip, wool to the front. And my counter, I'm doing ticks on a piece of paper, to be honest with you. I can make ticks. I mean, I could have a counter like written on the PDF as well, but I'm just doing it on a piece of paper. I have an app on my phone as well. Oops, now I need to make that tree branch move. So I have an app on my phone called like Knit Counter, I think, which is just like you tick the button and it increments the count. But I frankly always forget to do it. And right now my phone is being used as the camera anyway, so I can't really use it for that. All right, I'll show you the moving tree branch on the next one when I get to it. All right, so I got to do another, more cable crossing. I glossed over the moving tree branch, didn't I? Oh, it's probably just why they want you to slip, and ours is just a knit. Mine's just a knit. It's just a different look. It would be a slightly different effect. Slipping a stitch over a row makes it bigger. Like the center branch of the tree branches, each one of those is slipped every other round, so they are stretching up over 2 rows instead of just one. So it's an effect. It's a visual effect. So whatever cable they're having you do, they just like the way it looks. Yeah, it's literally just a different stitch. It's for different decorative effect. I mean, it also affects, the fabric. Like if you do an all over fabric with slipped stitches, I think if I'm remembering correctly, like if you do a pattern that's got slipped stitches heavily involved, it will actually eat up more yarn because the rows, I think it makes it's kind of compresses your row height. And yeah, you end up knitting more rows for the same height. Like I've done linen stitch, and I think is one that involves a lot of slipping. I did a scarf for Rod, and you end up with quite a dense fabric if you do all over. But this one, you know, the slip stitch is just being used for a decorative effect for that central tree trunk. But yeah, it just depends on the pattern. Yeah, you can do the one you like. Like if you like how it looks knitting it or purling it instead of slipping it, do that. Okay, I'm at the halfway point of this round. Still a lot of cabling. Yellow is the halfway point. Just trying to learn something new? Yeah, exactly. All right, so there's my twisted stitch boundary, purl. You usually get cables, you know, set against a reverse stocking stitch background. So by that I mean that's that purl stitch I'm doing every other row. It's the bit behind the cables. Cables are usually done in stocking stitch against a reverse stocking stitch background, aka the cables are usually knits, and then there'll be purls either side if you're knitting in the round. But not always. Okay, there's the cable. I'll knit a purl, and again I give it an extra tug, tighten it up. And so the other twist, I need these 2 stitches to come to the front. It would be written as slide next 2 stitches to cable needle and hold at front, knit next 2 stitches, then knit the 2 stitches from the cable needle. Boring. Catch stitches 3 and 4 through the back, slide them all off, rearrange. So much faster and easier. Okay. Ladder motif is purl across the whole thing. One of the first all over cable jumpers I did was from a Sirdar pattern book. They're a UK woolen pattern maker. And it was from like their Book of Erin family sweaters or something like that. And so I knitted a jumper for Rod, and it's on Ravelry, but it was all written out in words. There were no charts. Every pattern was written out in words. And it was such a nightmare. Like, I'm like, each pattern was like so long. They could have been so much shorter if they had used charts. And so I actually ended up opening Excel and making my own charts because I was so annoyed. And I actually think it was they were knitted separately. The front, it wasn't knitted in the round. So also therefore, because it was meant to be knitted back and forth, you'd have a row written out from right to left for the knit side, and then the next alternate row would be written out for the purl side going back. So that's why I was like, I wanted to knit it in the round, therefore every other row I had to reverse both the direction and reverse all the knits to purls and vice versa. So that's when I decided, let's just chart it, because then charts can be used either way. Can be used for round or flat knitting. So I don't understand why any penny. Obviously the people who buy their patterns, they think preferred it that way, but I found it really frustrating. Okay, across this one. Okay, we're almost up to the trees again. Okay, we're up to the tree motif, the central tree motif there. So, twisted stitch for my boundary. And there's a purl. Okay, then there's the start of the next tree branch. It's a knit stitch. There it is. And so if you look at the pattern, so there's a knit stitch there and there's one here. And they're going to converge towards the center. So every odd row, of which this is an odd row, this is row 41, it needs to move one stitch to the left. So basically I need to switch the order of this knit and this purl. And so the pattern would say, slip the next stitch to a cable needle, hold at the front, purl the next stitch, and then knit the stitch from the cable needle. Again, pain in the ass. So I'm going to grab the purl from behind. So I've grabbed it from behind, slide them both off, and rearrange. So I know that, because I want the knits to go across the purls. So there they go. And now I know I need to purl that purl stitch. And then I knit the knit. But I could easily see that, you know, being a slipped stitch instead of a knit for the tree branch. In fact, that might look kind of cool. Like I could see that being a nice effect. So clearly the pattern you're doing, they're doing it for some effect of that. Usually, you know, usually cables, when we think of cables, we think of this kind, like the kind of rope cable where you're doing multiples. When you're moving just one stitch, it's often, you know, I think it's referred to as a traveling stitch, something like that, where you've kind of got to design a line that is being drawn across the surface of the fabric. And so I could easily see where that would be slipped instead of knitted, because it's going to make that traveling stitch stand out just that much more. All right, and then the tree trunk. So we're at the tree trunk. For the tree trunk, it tells me wool to the back, slip the stitches of the purl, wool back to the front. So it just means that tree trunk, every stitch is twice as tall, and they just stand out a little bit more. Okay, and now I'm at the other tree branch. So this knit stitch needs to cross over the purl. So I'm sliding them off, I'm rearranging, do the knit, then do the purl. And of course, you just remember to move your wool to the front and back between the needles as necessary when you switch from knits and purls. So if we look at that now. So there's our tree branch there and tree branch there that are starting to converge towards the center. They're making an asymmetrical diamond pattern for a hat. Okay, cool. I would probably do it as written just to see why they've written it that way, you know, what it looks like. I mean, you could also do a swatch where you compare the two different, you know, approaches and see which one you like better. Across this cable. And I think as I get to the end of this round, I might switch over to my sock for a while. As for a change of pace. Okay, here's the ladder. Do a swatch first to practice. Yeah, that's a good idea. A lot of cable, a very common practice for cable patterns is to actually knit a hat as your swatch. And get a matching hat out of it and practice the cables before you do the jumper. I mean, if I have enough wool left over, I could easily do a matching hat for this, I guess. All right, and then we've got the bit of stocking stitch at the sides to finish the round. Yeah, you get the hang of it without the cable needle. Like, it takes a little bit of like, sometimes I have to look at it and be like, all right, so I need these stitches to go behind those stitches. And, you know, if you do it wrong, you just undo it and you figure it out. All right, so there's that row finished. That is row 41 done. And nice. Let's switch to the sock for a while. I'll switch to the, pull that in. Switch the current project to undulating rib sock. So I've obviously made some progress since you saw it last. Yeah. I'm not sure. Hey, Woben, how are you? Frankly, I'm not sure with the self-striping I need to do the undulating rib. Like, I don't think you can really see it that much. Again, I guess you can against it. So I'm kind of debating whether, look, I'm going to keep going, but I don't know. You know, I almost feel like with stripes, with self-striping, you pretty much just want to do a plain sock. I just find plain socks boring. So I'm doing this on the 2 circulars method. If you watched, I think, last episode, I cast on for these last week. And if you watched the previous stream, it shows how I do the cast on for the 2 circulars method. In a nutshell, cast on onto one needle, then slide 50% of the stitches onto another cable needle, then slide the whole piece of work to the opposite ends of both needles, which is the magic, and you need to watch it to see what I mean by that. And then you can join and start knitting in the round. Yes, these are the Slytherin socks. Yeah, that's why I chose these. I've knitted this pattern before. It's a sort of self-striping that they've used, but it's a very subtle one versus this yarn is anything but subtle. Yeah. And so I'm using 2 different needles. I mean, they're the same size, but just so that you can see what I'm doing when I do the 2 circulars method, that I'm always knitting off of and onto the same needle. And honestly, that helps me too. Sometimes if you grab the wrong one, you end up with a 4-dimensional tesseract kind of oddity. It's a pain. You'll lose a lot of definition in the black stripes. Yeah, exactly. You can't, I mean, I can't even knit these at night, the black. It's just hard. Black 4-ply is like the devil's work, really. It's quite hard to see. So I did a few rows yesterday. We went to the park and I knitted outside in strong sunshine. But yeah, if I'm on a black stripe, I can really only do it during the day. So it's kind of an interesting rib. I mean, the bulk of the pattern is 3 knits, purl, and then a knit purl. So it's a rib of 3 and then a rib of 1. But every 7 rows, you change it. Like you collapse the 3 stitches down to 1 and you expand the 1 stitch up to 3. Which is what gives you that sort of this almost like little, if I hold it a bit closer, you can see them, you know, almost like little, it looks like little snakes, you know, snakes that have eaten something. Seemed very apropos for a Slytherin-ish sort of a yarn. And the fact that, you know, every 7 rows this happens. It's very Hogwarts, isn't it? The So Faded pattern route. It's a sweater where they go from one color to another. Yeah, fades are, I mean, like, I like a long gradient. I do like a long gradient. But yeah, there's kind of a trend. There's been a trend the last few years for, you know, find your fade shawls and that, where you sort of, you know, roll your own kind of by buying a whole bunch of flecky different yarns and kind of fading them one to another. Who can be arsed? And honestly, I don't like those sort of flecky yarns anyway. I like strong colors. All right, finish the end of the row, flip it round. Now I'm on the purple needle. Basically, you know, I was saying last time, what I do is always make sure if I forget where I am when I'm doing this technique, I make sure the working yarn is coming off the back right. So the back needle on the right side, then I know I'm knitting onto the front needle, the purple one. So I pull it through, slide them along. And then the first stitch, I always give a little extra tug to close up any ladders there where you're going from one cable to the next. Just pull those first 2 stitches a little, give them a little extra tug. If you want to make a sweater with a gradient, I mean, hi Crimson Daggerfall. One of the sweaters should be in the, actually, I think I've got it here. Let me grab something real quick and show you this, Alizar. I actually have 3 different projects on the go at once, of course. Maybe I'll work on this. This I actually had finished and then decided I didn't like an aspect of it and pulled it apart. And so now I'm back to working on it. But this is the, what was it called? I can't remember. Easy Eyelet Yoke. And it's using a single cake of Twister yarn by Hobby. And so, yeah, I really like this. And so it's a long, hi Crimson. Yeah, so it's a really long gradient and it's done because each color is different threads twisted together. So they sort of drop colors and introduce colors, which is how you get the fade. But yeah, I'm re-knitting this. So I frogged it into a giant ball here and maybe I'll do a few stitches on that. Which is why it's all crinkly, because I frogged it. Yeah, it was 1 cake of yarn. I do have a whole cake of it. Let me show you. So this is a different colorway, obviously. I bought 2 of them. But so this one, yeah, it's Twister by Hobby. It's a cotton acrylic. So look, it's nice for in Sydney. I figured when I go back to Australia, it's good for a warmer climate. And here, but yeah, it's got a little piece of paper so I can start in a center. I'll start at the center and go towards the darker down at the hips. But yeah, and you can tell it's just multiple strands twisted around each other, which is how they achieve the color gradient. And it's very addictive. Yeah, Hobby's good. They're, I think, Danish. And so now that I'm here, I get their ads on like Facebook and Instagram all the time. And so they lured me in with one of their many sales. And I also bought one of these cakes that they do, a long gradient, but I splurged and bought one in their wool cashmere. So I'll do that once it starts, you know, maybe in the autumn when it starts getting colder again. So this is not the undulating rib sock. Whoops, what did I do? the center. There we go. Thanks, Margaret. Great to see you. Yeah, they have a lot of sales, hubby. And they have a German site, so it was really convenient. But the pattern, so I'd already finished it, and you'll see it. It's in the slideshow, the finished garment. Yeah, this thing was done. And then I was wearing it one day, and it has you at one point increase a few stitches, and I just spaced them out randomly. And my husband said it looked like I had like a ladder down the back of the jumper because of where I'd done the increase. And so I decided, I don't know, I was in a fit of madness, frogged the whole thing up to that point and redistributed the increases so that they sort of fall under the arms. But basically I had a lot of fun knitting it the first time, so I kind of figured I would have just as much fun knitting the second time. Yeah, I realized I wasn't happy with that one particular design decision. There it is. There's me wearing it. So that's what it'll look like again when I'm done. And that's the one I'm wearing now. Can go a lot faster on this though than on the socks or on the cables. No, it's really hard to increase or decrease invisibly. There's certain techniques that, you know, are less noticeable, but the one I did was poorly chosen and put smack in the middle of my back. And so I couldn't tell from the front, but from the back, it looked like I had a run in the sweater. So let's redo it because I do like this and I wear it a fair bit. Technically, when you recycle yarn, you should put it into hanks and give it a wash to get rid of the kinks, but it's cotton acrylic, so it's got minimal stretch anyway. So yes, it's kinked up, but once I finish knitting it, I'll give it a wash and it'll relax and all the sort of, I mean, you can tell the bit I've re-knitted because it sort of looks more rough than the previous bit. It'll block out. So this is my mindless TV knitting at night. Something more upbeat on the music. Have you found any yarn that's breathable enough to make a summer top in? I mean, this is quite nice, actually. I wore this in Australia, and it wasn't too bad. Linen is great for summer. I mean, linen has drawbacks. Linen is very hard on your hands when you knit it, usually. It softens up when you wash it, but it's usually quite, rough to knit with. And linen has a tendency to drop. The weight of it, as you wear the thing, it will stretch longer and longer and longer. So often with linen things, they'll tell you to hang them. Someone I know made their wedding dress, knitted her own wedding dress out of linen, and it was stretching so much as she wore it. She had sewn it to the lining to try and keep it from basically drooping down to the floor. But cotton generally works. Usually you find, I like this where it's a mix of cotton and acrylic, because cotton on its own can be quite heavy as well. And so when you mix a little acrylic in, it lightens it up, physically lightens it up so the garment isn't as heavy. Another one I did, brown sheep cotton fleece. They make a cotton. I think it might be a cotton wool, that one. But yeah, I like a cotton blend. What's this thing? This thing is Knit Picks Comfy. What's Knit Picks Comfy knitted out of? Made out of? Knit Picks Comfy is Easy Care Warm Weather Knitting. Yeah. Pima cotton, 25% acrylic. So the one I'm wearing, actually, this hoodie, is Knit Picks Comfy Worsted. So yeah, that's 75% cotton, 25% acrylic. That's the one shown there. So, it's thick, but it's pretty wearable on a warm day. I'm forcing myself to finish this one again before I get to start on the other cake. It's a nice sunny day. I think I might have to go for a bike ride soon. Oh, you've got chronic fatigue. One of the drawbacks, you get easily very warm. Wearing rayon and viscose in the summer. Yeah, that would be nice as well, actually. It's just you don't get, there aren't that many yarns. But yeah, that would be nice too. So I actually finished this one, it was about a year ago, I think, maybe earlier. Oh no, it was pre-lockdown. I definitely finished it pre-lockdown. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to knock anyone who knits in 100% acrylic. Like, I get it, especially when you're starting out. It's cheap. You can get it, you know, I mean, they sell it at the grocery store here. And it's great when you're learning, but after knitting a few things out of it, I realized pretty quickly that I don't, you know, yeah, it gets very, very warm against your skin. It doesn't breathe as well. So I like it, you know, cut with cotton or mixed in with cotton. That makes it a little bit better. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily get anything that's 100% acrylic these days. But I totally get why people do. And especially, you know, novelty yarns. A lot of the novelty yarns are 100% acrylic, obviously. But I think the novelty yarn fad is mostly over. The trend at the moment, like the fad lately, seems to be those like really, really thick. It's basically roving, you know, unspun stuff. People want to knit like super big blankets on super chunky needles. Which they look great in a photo on Instagram. But I'm telling you, there's a reason we spin yarn. Unspun roving, knitting it looks cool. But I just tell you, it's going to pill up and look terrible. You know, not long after actually using the blanket. So, yeah, I haven't bothered knitting any of those. Plus, knitting with, you know, broomsticks is just painful. One thing that's nice about having a few different projects on the go is, you know, you've done a blanket. Yeah, I imagine, Woben, it would be like, so people would come into the knitting shop and want to do something on really thick wool with really thick needles. And I would always tell the beginners, like, it's actually really hard on your wrists. And they're awkward, those big needles. They're very awkward, you know, like for someone, an experienced knitter, they're awkward. I would always advise beginners to get needles about the size of a pencil or a pen, you know, because obviously we're sort of socialized through writing to be you know, very dexterous with something about that size. So I just found that easiest for people to learn on, to handle. Anything thicker than that, like, gets very, very awkward. Resultant blanket is very heavy, but that's, yeah, well, I mean, I like a heavy blanket, you know, basically it's like a weighted blanket, but just because of the weight of the wool. Like if I were going to do one of those that looked like a very big knit stitch, there was one company, I forget what it was called, who were selling a yarn that you knit with, but it was basically like, it was a stuffed tube, you know, it was almost like, imagine like a pantyhose, but like with like polyfill or stuffing in it, you know, because then if you knitted with that, it would look the same, but because it's not actually wool or acrylic, it's not going to pill on you in the same way. That I found a lot more interesting. And it would be loftier, you know, not as heavy, I suppose, as well. What would be interesting to do would be to knit with I-cord. Like, start by making I-cord and then knit with it. Because that would give you the chunkiness. But my God, it would take forever. You get one of those hand cranked things that crank out, you know, I-cord. Crank a bit, knit with it, crank a bit, knit with it. Yeah, I wouldn't knit the I-cord. I'd use one of those circular knitting machines. Now I'm thinking about it. That would be kind of fun to do. Rig up a circular knitting machine to knit just a tube. And then knit the tube. So it's started to introduce the sort of reddish color on this stripe. It's very addictive, this yarn. Kind of tempted to stop and go back and do the arms now. Maybe I'll do that. So I've got the armhole, the arm stitches sitting there on a stitch marker. So what I'll do is I'll take that off and I'll join my tips together just to keep them. Can I do that? Will it be long enough? Let's see. I don't know if my sleeve will be long enough to fit around this circular needle or not. I think it will, just. So I actually have the wool I reclaimed for the sleeves. They're quite short little sleeves. So what I want to do is pick up along that cast off edge. I can even magic loop it, can I? Is it long enough? Not quite long enough. Look up the pattern and remember what the hell the sleeves are actually supposed to be. Yeah, it's the sleeves. So when I knitted the garment the first time, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted the sleeve. Oh, let me. I lost the picture there. I wanted the sleeves to actually fit into the gradient, to not be a different color, which meant that I kind of knitted them. I as soon as I got to the part where I did the sleeves, I stopped and knitted the sleeves separately, and there's the pattern. I have it. It's in my library, isn't it? Library. I did buy the pattern. There it is. Download. So yeah, I stopped and knitted the sleeve so that way the color would match where it was on the body at the same time. So sleeves is starting at the bottom of the armpit. Pick up. Yeah. And then just knit. It's literally, oh, you literally just, I see. It's literally just closing off the ribbing. Like you don't really do any rows. Is that what I did? I love how I'm trying to like recreate a pattern I did ages ago. I feel like I knitted a little bit on these sleeves. Zoom in. Enhance. I'm looking at a photo I took on a garment more than a year ago and trying to recreate it. Yeah. And I did, which size did I make? I made the biggest size, I think. Not quite the biggest size. Third size. Sizes, 1, 2, 3, fourth size. So pick up 9 stitches. All right, easy. One, two, three, four, 5. How many am I picking up? 9, 4, and 5. Doesn't really matter. It's an armpit. As long as I pick it up on the same amount on both of them, it'll be fine. 7, 8. Let's call that one 9. Sure, 9 stitches. Now we just knit around. Yeah, I'll just magic loop it so I can use my short needle. I mean, it's in the armpit, you're not gonna see it. Keep moving the whole thing around. That feels like a knot, but I think it's just a twisted up spot. Yeah. So because I'm using a short needle, I'm just kind of pulling out a loop each time because the stitches don't quite stretch all the way around. So by breaking the yarn at the body and knitting the sleeves immediately, I ensured that they matched the color on the body. And then I knitted these very short little sleeves, and then I went back and finished the body. So it means the sleeves sort of fit into the color gradient. I'm not going back and doing them at the end with a completely different color. Which is a tip I think I learned on Ravelry. Someone else gave that tip. All right, so here's the bit where I'm joining from where I started this round. Just pull those a bit tighter. The picked up stitches. I might do one more round before I start the ribbing. Missed a stitch there. if you're just joining, I'm knitting the sleeves on this top-down sweater. So I'm just going round and around. I'm just doing a little cap sleeve. And I'm re-knitting this project, which is why the wool's all kinked up, because I frogged it to fix an error, and now I'm re-knitting it. See there, that's the armhole. That other needle there are the body stitches, patiently waiting until I go back to them. Get out of the way, body stitches. And I'm obviously doing magic loop on these sleeves because it's a small circumference and I have like a larger circular needle I'm using on it, but that's okay. No, I'm not using short rows. I'm just going round and around. All right, so I'm at the underarm now. So I'm going to start doing the knit one, purl one ribbing. Yeah, you can do short rows. I mean, if you want to get more of a sort of pronounced shape, but no, these are just plain old knitted in the round. All right, I'm going to start doing knit one, purl one ribbing now. Let me go back a stitch or two. So I sort of center it in the armpit. I'll do a few rows of knit one, purl one ribbing, and then cast off. And that's it for the sleeves. I mean, this thing has very short sleeves. Really, the sleeves have been kind of formed by the body increases in the yoke. I mean, short rows are nice. They're much, I mean, they're a really nice technique. It's a more advanced technique. Like, it's a pain to do them well, but they look great. Okay, so purl, knit. That was a purl I just did, so I'm ready for a knit. always feel like there's a fine art to how much you can substitute and replace on a pattern. You know, it's obviously it's your pattern. You can do whatever, it's your garment. You can do whatever you want with it. But like, you know, how much you it's like those recipes, you know, where someone leaves a comment on a recipe and they're like, oh, this is great, but I changed the chicken to fish and I changed the vegetables from, you know, leeks to celery. And it's like, all right, that's actually an entirely different thing. And that might be a good thing, but it's not the original thing anymore. You know, swapping out a slip stitch, sure, that's not materially changing it. Yeah, if you know, change it from a cap sleeve to a standard sleeve, that's fine. But yeah, at some point you're getting away from the original design, which is fine. And you're using it as you're designing your own. Now, I didn't actually count to see if I had an even number of stitches. So as I get around to the start of the round, I may need to do a decrease just to get the right number, but that's okay. So this had you do 5 rounds of ribbing. See, the big hole there is where I started casting on, where I started picking up stitches for the armpits. I've got the tail, so I just tighten it up every time I come around. And when I weave in that tail, I'll use it to sort of close that little gap there at the armpit. A purl. I must be nearly back around. Oh, look at that, knit purl. So I did, uh-oh, there's a dropped stitch. Eek! Luckily I caught it. Don't know how I did that. Fix the drop stitch as we come to it. So what I'm gonna do is just use a stitch marker to grab that dropped stitch so I don't lose it. Where'd you go? There you are. So it doesn't drop down any further. And then we'll fix it as we come to it. Must have just slipped off the needle and I missed it when I was starting the ribbing. No harm, we can fix it. Purl. So this is where it would be. That's where it would sit. And how many rows down did I drop it? Looks like 1. Look, it's in the armpit. Doesn't really matter, does it? So put it back on the left-hand needle. And then I will pick up. So where's my crochet hook? That'll be easier for picking it up. Do I not have a crochet hook around here? Ah! This is very annoying. Let me just find a crochet hook or another needle. One sec. Much better. Now I can fix the dropped stitch. Picked it up. And then what I will do actually is just knit it together, because I left it out when I was doing the ribbing. So I will just knit it together with the stitch next to it. Kris is averted. Saved, yes. It was just, armpit confusion. How are you, Rusty? Good morning to you. And I'll be very careful in checking as I go around this time that I didn't drop any others. I don't think I did. Yeah, lurking knit, sure. I've been jumping around between different projects today. These sleeves will be real short, like only a few rows. I mean, look, that's the wool I frogged off it. Like, there's not much to it. So I'll be casting off the sleeve very soon. These are very short little cap sleeves, so they'll be fast. This is the first one. Are you saying you're doing a second sleeve? This is a project I'd already finished, and I just didn't like something on it, so I frogged it to redo it. Yeah, it's the first sleeve, but each one is only, it's a top-down cap sleeve, so each one is really only picking up and then a couple rows of ribbing and you cast off. There's not much actual sleeve to it. Biggest pain is just that I'm magic looping it. Okay, so this is my third row of ribbing. Only doing 5 before I cast off. So I'm playing a little bit of yarn chicken here, given that I've got a very small amount of yarn to use. And I'm assuming I do 5 rounds, but maybe I only do 4 because I can't remember what I did if I followed the pattern exactly the first time. So what I'm gonna do, so this is the 3rd round of ribbing, right? So what I'm gonna do is when I start the 4th, I'm gonna use a little trick that you can do when you play yarn chicken to ascertain how many more rows you can do. Come on, go. Just keep flipping the thing around. Does that look like that is also a dropped stitch? Tell me it is not. It is! Are you kidding me? Are you a dropped stitch? Actually kind of hard to tell. I don't think so. No, that's the cast off edge from where I cast off at the underarm, right? I think that's all that is. It's not raveling, whatever it is. I think it's just because I'm in the underarm and I picked up stitches and it looks like it's a dropped stitch, but it is not a dropped stitch. All good, all good. All right, this is the 4th round. So 1, 2, 3, 4th round of ribbing. So what I'm gonna do, just to make sure I have enough yarn, I'm going to take what I have left. What I'm doing is I'm unraveling it, and I'm going to put the tail next to the end, and I'm going to find the halfway point. All right, so this is about the halfway point of my remaining wool. I'm going to just tie a little knot there. Not tying it tight, but I've just put a little knot to mark the halfway point. Now, if I hit that knot, then I know that if I finish the next round before I hit the knot, I know I can do another round after that. That's the question, basically. I don't think that is a drop stitch. It's just where I picked up, and I picked up in a funky way, so it's fine. The point of picking up under the armpit is it doesn't matter if it looks slightly wonky. As long as it's not unraveling. So yeah, if you're trying to figure out if you can do 1, 2, how many more rows you can do, I just divide my yarn in half and then make a little knot or something and see if I hit the knot. If I'm way short on the knot, I'll risk doing a 5th row of ribbing. Otherwise, I'll go straight to the cast off. There's always things people will tell you, oh, each knit stitch equals 1 inch of that. I haven't found any of that to be particularly useful. You need 3 times as much as the width of the piece that you're knitting. I don't know. hacks. They're hacks, Salazar. Yeah. Knitting hacks. Yeah, the same. 3 times for the long tail. Yeah, no. I just eyeball the long tail, which is why I never use it on anything where I have to cast on a lot of stitches, because it's painful if you run. There are tricks you can use, like you can actually splice in some more wool if you run out, but it's always very discouraging to me. Just use both ends of the ball. Yeah, exactly. I know, I know. I don't like more ends to weave in. I'm very lazy when it comes to weaving in ends. Then just use 2 balls, Alazar. Yeah, that would be the trick there. Oops. All right. Okay, there's my knot, and I've just finished this round, which means I've got pretty much enough for 1 row left to do the cast off. So I'll be doing 4 rows of ribbing and not 5. So if I hadn't done that, I would have probably tried to do another row of ribbing and then not had enough to do my cast off. So good to know. So 4 rows of ribbing and then doing the cast off. Oh no, you redid those 200 stitches. I've been there, done that. Yep, same. Okay, and then I think this is where I'm going to start. Yes, this is where I start my cast off, at the place that looks like a drop stitch, but again, we're pretty sure is not. It's not. Okay. All right, casting off in rib. So knit. You know what I could do? I could show you and use the crochet hook instead. That can be fun. And then my crochet hook's bigger than my needle, I think, so it will mean that my cast off ends up slightly looser. Reading, catching up on the chat. I would normally be quite afraid of running out of yarn, but I know because of my knot that I'm not, so should be fine. Rusty jumped in. Don't you fall off. Sometimes the crochet hook's a little awkward. Yeah, I'm using a crochet hook to cast off. So I'm using it like a knitting needle. So here I'm purling. But the advantage is I can then just use the hook to pull. I don't have to lift the tip and lift the stitch over. You can just pull it through. You know, like it, because that's really what you're doing. You're doing like a, it makes that step easier. It does make the knitting slightly harder because my crochet hook's very rounded. Hi, Moonshift. Thanks for the follow. You know, it is slightly more painful because it's not pointy like a needle to actually do the knitting part, but... And because I'm using a crochet hook that is slightly bigger than what I'm knitting with, it should make my... It's a 4mm. Actually, it's probably the same size. I'm trying to cast off loosely. I don't want the armholes to be too tight. on the pearls to get it through. I am closing in on 100 followers. This is very exciting. Last little bit of wool. Good tip, Woban, on draping the waste yarn as a marker. I've also seen that tip used for counting rows. You know, have a piece of waste yarn that you carry up the side of the piece and flip it back and forth every so many rows. Makes it very easy to count how many rows you've done. Okay. Only a few stitches left. Only a very short bit of yarn left, so I hope I made it. I hope my calculations were correct. I mean, casting off does use up a little more yarn than knitting, so it's possible that I could run out. I think what's going to happen is I'm just going to have quite a short tail to weave in. Oof! How many stitches left? Like 10. Coming right down to the wire. Uh-oh. Cheat. How did I? It's because I'm casting off so much looser than I was knitting. Oh, bloody hell. I know what I'll do. I'm gonna cheat. I have the ball for the other sleeve. voila. So I can use that to finish these last few stitches, and then the other sleeve I will make Rusty, it thought you saying looser was like calling someone a loser. So I've approved that message, but yeah. So yeah, I will use this and I will do the other sleeve one row shorter because you won't notice, so it'll be fine. So I'm just gonna join in another bit for like the last 5 stitches. So even with all the planning in the world, I still lost at yarn chicken. It happens. All right, where's my little tool bag gone? Ah, shit! Oh, just dropped water. 1 second. Knocked the water bottle over onto my keyboard, but luckily it only spilled a tiny bit, so I think we're okay. Sorry about that. That was frightening. All good. It's been a comedy of errors today. There's where it joined those two. So I've just got a few ends to weave in when I come back. But there is our completed sleeve on that side. So it's really just ribbing is all the sleeve is. All right. Should I do the other sleeve now? I might as well, huh? Yeah, everything's all right. Disaster averted. I just, spilled it on the corner of my laptop, but not actually on my laptop. Phew. What needle size is this? Have I actually used the correct size? So I was using a 4mm needle, and this is a 3.75, so it's slightly smaller. So I should transfer it. It's a bit like watching, a Formula One race or NASCAR or something, you watch for like the car crash. All right. All right, so time to pick up the other sleeve. That's where it joined in the body wool before, isn't it? Don't make a knot. See if I can pick up this sleeve slightly less messily than I did the first one. All right, so I picked up 9 stitches across, so that's the underarm gap there. So I'm going to pick up 9 stitches across that, and so I lost about 6 inches off this bit of wool, so we'll be very careful to leave a short tail. Not too short. Pick up an extra one down here. Okay, picked up, so created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches across the armpit, and then I'm going to knit 1 round. Yeah, no, I just had a few drips that went over the arrow keys, and this Mac is pretty doesn't have a lot of gaps, so I think we're fine. I got it pretty quickly. This is why I should put my water on the other side. So I had these sleeve stitches sitting on a different needle, a smaller needle, so I'm just knitting off of that needle onto the proper sized one for doing the sleeve. If you're wondering why I'm juggling multiple needles here, I am. Yeah, mine is up on a stand as well, which I think helped. It's raised up a little bit, so I only got a few drops in the end. Okay, needle is gone. All right, so there's all of our sleeve stitches now on the needle. And so this is where on the last sleeve, I actually did another row of stocking stitch before I started the ribbing. I'm not gonna do it on this one. I'm gonna go straight into the ribbing because remember, I'm gonna make this sleeve one row shorter to compensate for the extra bit of yarn I stole for the other sleeve. Fun. And now because I'm using this needle, I'm gonna be magic looping as well. I'm gonna knit like 4 or 5 just to get to the center of the armpit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm at the center of the armpit now, and now I'll start my 1x1 ribbing. My knit 1, purl 1 ribbing.
I don't have a lot of patience for people who feel like they're downloading from the cosmos.
What is this song? This is weird.
You know, just
I'm gonna skip over this. I don't want songs with talking in them. Knit, purl. So we had a dropped stitch, we had a game of yarn chicken that I lost, we had water spilled. This is a fun project, huh? Eventful day of knitting. So much for chill knitting. That was a purl, wasn't it? Yes. Thanks, Tessalina Sophia, for the follow. Great name. Third time's the charm. Yeah, don't jinx me, Rusty. Greetings from Germany. Oh, moin moin. Ich bin auch in Deutschland, Tessalina. Nice to meet you. I'm in München. Where are you? This sweater, the eyelet yoke, well, this is my second time finishing it. It was technically finished, but I didn't like... Oh, you're in... Oh, I love Heidelberg. Oh, it's like my favorite place. I visited once when I was a student, and I can't wait until we can travel a bit more and I can go back and visit Schloss Heidelberg again. Yeah, my advice to you is on this one, if you're doing the exact same jumper, there's a line after you finish the body and divide for the sleeves where it tells you to add some increases and space them randomly around. Take my advice and space them under the arms, because I did one right in the middle of the back and it looks stupid. So that's why I ended up frogging the whole jumper and re-knitting it so that I didn't have any random increases in the middle of the back, making it look like I dropped a stitch. Or randomly knitted two together. It's great though. The are you using the hobby twister for it? or a similar graduated, you know, gradient yarn. Ready to ease up on the lockdowns. Well, just let me get vaccinated, and then, yes, then I'm very eager to travel. Moved here 7 months ago to take a job that would require me to travel all over Europe, and I've been sitting in this room for 7 months, more or less. Okay, I'm back around to the armpit again. And oh, hey, and the number, my even odd worked out perfectly this time. Not quite sure how that happened, but it did. All right, so I'm on my second row of ribbing. All right, see you later, Elazar. Nice to see you as always. I'm just gonna finish the sleeve and then I'm gonna call it a day, I think. Oh, yeah, you got here, yeah, and greeted by the pandemic, yeah. I started thinking about moving to Germany in January 2020 and applied for jobs, and then got my job just as the whole world was going into lockdown, so try and not be too sad about it. I am still in a very lucky position, and other people have it a lot worse, but it does kind of suck. The sun is shining today. I think I'm gonna have to go for a bike ride. I'm really ready for it to warm up. I mean, we had snow within the last few weeks, but I see people riding by my window. It looks like a lovely day today. So if you've just joined, I am working on the sleeves of this jumper. I'm finishing off the second sleeve. This is a top-down sweater The Easy Eyelet Yoke Light, actually, I believe it's called on Ravelry. And so really there's not much actually to the sleeves. There's just a bit of ribbing before you cast off. So I'm just doing a few rows of ribbing and then I'll cast off and then I'll spread it out so you can actually see what it looks like. And because see, there's my sleeve there, as I'm going round and around a small circumference, I'm doing magic loop, which just means I'm sort of pulling the cable out between a few of the stitches every so often. Because I don't have enough stitches to stretch all the way around my cable needle. My circular needle, rather, sorry. So I'm just doing knit one, purl one ribbing for the sleeve cuffs. So knit one, purl one. Okay, I'm back around to the armpit, which means I've done 2 rows of ribbing. I'm aiming for 4 in total. So I'm on the 3rd row now. Oh, my husband's messaging me. Well, that was 20 minutes ago. Whoops. Was in the middle of the whole knocking my water bottle over debacle. It's been an eventful day today. Untwist my work a little bit. almost to the last row of ribbing. Yep, this is it here, row number 4. And then I'll cast off. And the sleeves will be done again. I've discovered the local yarn store. So I visited Munich. I visited before we moved here. And so I actually went to several of them when we were here as tourists, buying yarn to take home to friends in Australia. I think I've bought the most from Ardelia. But yeah, there's a couple. Unfortunately, with lockdown, they're all shut down at the moment. So I've ordered a few things from Hobby, obviously, who are online, and done a few bits of online shopping, but I also shipped my stash out from Australia. So a lot of this stuff I actually had from before. Didn't ship all the stash, but shipped most of the stash. The sort of garment quantities, that I wanted to use up. But I'm not sort of a yarn accumulator the way some knitters are. I don't like having stash accumulation beyond life expectancy kind of situation. Don't fall stitch. Sold all your furniture in Boston, but shipped the stash. Hey, priorities. See, from Boston originally. Oh, cool. I have spent some time in Boston. One of my best friends from uni was from Framingham. So I visited her spring break. Hung out with her fam. Okay, we're coming back up to the armpit, which means I've finished, pretty much just about to finish round 4 of ribbing. And so we can, I can start on the casting off. 1, 2, 3. Yep. All right. So I think this is the point where I can start casting off. And so as I did on the previous sleeve, I'm actually going to cast off with a crochet hook, just for funsies. So I'm basically going to be casting off in ribs. So I'm going to be doing, knit 1, purl 1. And I'm going to use the crochet hook to pull the loop through the other loop. Sort of makes it a little faster than using the tip of the needle to lift one stitch up over the other. And try and cast off not too tightly either. Make sure I'm trying to cast off a bit loosely. Except sometimes both loops pop right off the crochet hook. Okay. Kind of scooch the stitches around. I imagine there are some really nice wool shops in Berlin. Not that you've really been able to go to many of them, I imagine. I did go to one like 2 weekends ago. It was, we briefly in Munich, the non-essential shops could be open by appointment. And so I did make a brief appointment to get into one because I needed a couple bowls of plain wool for a craft project. Only time I've set foot in a local yarn store in, months and months. Oh, yeah, last summer. Oh, that was, yeah, we got here right at the end of summer. It was glorious there for a few weeks before it all got locked down. I really can't wait to visit Berlin. I've never been to Berlin, actually. Got friends who live there. Got lots of travel planned for the second half of the year. Just fingers crossed I'll actually get to do any of it. Berlin is poor but sexy. That is their tagline. Munich is an expensive storybook. I like Munich. People in Germany kind of, I don't know, I'd kind of been prepared for people to be like, oh, it's very conservative, it's very religious, which I suppose compared to other parts of Germany is, but everyone seems quite welcoming. Maybe it's because I'm in the part of, Munich and West End, more over that way. More people of different backgrounds here, more immigrants. I'm sure it's nothing like Berlin, though, or Sydney, where I'm from, but still. Very interesting, different restaurants around here, and we found some great, Asian supermarkets, and it's not really been any ingredients that I haven't been able to find. Found a Turkish grocer so we can get lamb. So don't really do lamb as much here. It's not like we're used to doing in Australia. Oh, there's my husband again. Was he back? That's the last few stitches to cast off, and I'm done with the sleeve. Yay! This sleeve, knock on wood, has been a lot less eventful than the first one. Oh, I'm hungry. It's time to have some lunch. So no yarn chicken on this sleeve since I made it a row shorter. That's why I've got plenty of yarn left to do these last few stitches. On the previous sleeve, I ran short, but I'm all good on this one. Last stitch. Okay. Sleeve done. Okay, now you can see it a little better. That's back, that's the front. So there's the front there. So obviously it's being knitted from the neckline down, and that's one little sleeve, and that's the other little sleeve. And yes, this one is one row longer than this one, but you cannot tell, so it's fine. And now I just need to keep knitting forever on the body until it gets down to the hip. So got rid of the sleeves at least. Excuse me. And I'll just put the needle tips back on the body here. Okay. And ready to continue knitting on the body. Thank you for your moral support. That was, sleeves would be nice and easy, and they ended up being quite stressful, but got there in the end. And I'll just finish this round on the body. So yeah, my tip is if you want the sleeves to fit into the gradient, Tessalina, you got to do what I did, which is after you divide the arms, break off the yarn, knit the sleeves, and then go back to the body, because that way they fit into the color gradient. Otherwise, if you go back, the cuffs end up being a different color. So I saw that in some Ravelry comments. That was the tip of people, that if you wanted the sleeves to be the right color and to blend in, you have to do them at that point in the yarn cake. Okay, back to the start of the round. And that is a convenient place to finish for the day, I think. Some days knitting is not as relaxing as others. All right, so what have I accomplished today? I have done the sleeves on the eyelet yoke top. Finally got that happening. I did... Oh, hang on. I did a row and a bit on my sock. Let me just finish this particular row so that I can end it at a nice spot. Three different projects on the go. Rounds done on the Slytherin socks. Okay, and I did a couple rows on Dr. G's memory vest with the cables. So productive day in the end, really. Thanks everybody for joining, and probably see you again next weekend. If not during the week, we'll see. I got a lot on at work this week. We'll see if I do any weekday knitting this week. But if you followed me, you'll get a notification if I stream again during the week. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Best of luck with your knitting this week. Bye.